So then, welcome to this very special event on Superbooth 2022, and with special guests from Beirut. It's the Beirut Synthesizer Center. It's founded by Bana Haffar. We had her on the screen. She's away now. Elyse Tabet, Ziad, Moukarzel, and Manja, who is over there. Manja, sorry. Yes. So it's an education project that they are presenting their work they're doing in Beirut, and this is presented by Superbooth and the Goethe-Institut. And I'm very excited about what they are saying. Moderation is doing Peter Kirn from Create Digital Music, also a special guest. Please.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm glad to be here with these folks. We've had sort of a rotating series of exchanges through two separate projects supported by the Goethe-Institut, this time supported by the Goethe-Institut and the German Foreigners Office. So we've had lots of support to make this happen. You've all come here, or two of the three of you have come here. Then I was in Beirut also in April, and now it's great to have you all back. I'm going to switch off the slideshow so that Bana is again on the screen, and Bana, you can also say hi. I forget where you're joining us from. You're in California? Asheville? No, California.
No, I wish I was in California. I'm in Asheville. I can't see anybody in the room. I don't know what the situation is, but hello from Asheville, home of Moog and Make Noise.
There are thousands
hello,
of
Synth Center crew. Hello.
There are thousands of people in the audience. You can't see them, but they're lined up. Okay. Really. That was very good. That's very impressive. So maybe the best thing to do is to start to tell, well, first maybe you can tell us a little bit about, just very briefly, about your background, kind of pre-Beirut Synth Center. Each of you all have different lives as musicians that kind of led you to this point. I guess starting with you, Hany.
So, hi everybody. My name is Hany Manja. I'm Damascus-born musician, music producer. I lived, before moving to Beirut in 2019, I lived in Prague for 15 years, where I also was part of Synth Library Prague, which is very similar to what we are doing now in Beirut. We will talk about that later. So, yeah, I met Ziad and Elyse, I think, in September 2020. And then we start so they were doing also similar gathering for the synth community, also sometimes with Bana, where she was visiting Beirut in the previous years. But from September on, we connected together, and we created the team, and step by step we created the space. So, yeah. We will talk in details maybe later, but
yeah, exactly. So you're basically Czech, just as now I'm, after third generation, I've reverted to being Lebanese after 13 days. You're basically Czech.
I'm also Czech, yeah.
Also Czech, yeah. And it was also, I've gotten to hear these folks play, so it's important to understand that you each have a unique kind of musical voice and are collaborative in playing with one another. Ziad, can you tell us a little bit about your background as well? I'm going to go to the open hours slideshow here. Okay. Here we go.
Well, I've been making music in Beirut since 2008, probably, mostly electronic music. Of course, I played bass in high school, and I was in various punk and metal bands before, but I quit music after school and went into cinema. And now I'm a university teacher for sound, and I help running the Synthesizer Center, and I have my own studio, and I record, mix, and master music. So yeah, that's in short what I do. Yeah, I met, like Hany said, we met in 2020, and we started working on the center, on the idea, and expanding on it. Before that, I've been giving workshops in electronic music production, since 2015, and then we started doing the synthesizer meetings with Elyse and Bana and a bunch of other people. And yeah, I also DJ from time to time, and I love alcohol.
Yeah, I enjoyed drinking. If anybody needs a recommendation where to go get arak, it's also very possible to get good arak here in Berlin, so you can partake in this with us. Elyse?
Hey, I'm Elyse. So I started doing music because I was doing animation and I needed sound for my animations. And very quickly I realized I was spending way more time than I should on the sound and less time on the video editing and rendering and animation. Today I do both, but yeah, I mean, that was maybe also 2009. And it started with a lot of found sound and field recordings, and then DAWs, and then synthesizers, and yeah, some DJing for sure. Like on and off DJing was always in the foundations. And today I teach visual communication and graphic design. I've been doing that for a few years. And I also work at the Synthesizer Center and I produce my own music. And I also love alcohol, yeah.
You also love alcohol. Well, you're among friends. While I'm drinking water. Bana, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? And maybe then it's best to kind of start with you and sort of the story, to have you sort of kick off the story of how the Synth Center got started.
Oh, wow. Okay, I wasn't prepared for that. I'm actually drinking
okay,
tea.
well, let's just start with your story
I'm drinking
first.
tea because it's still very early. But my name is Bana Haffar. I am I guess I identify as an electronic music composer, although it's hard with the multitude of things that are, I think, required of electronic musicians these days. I currently live in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm the co-founder of Manja on the Spot, for those who have heard of that event that started in LA, and co-founder of the Synth Center. And my connection with Beirut is that my parents lived there, so I kind of grew up visiting Beirut every year. And then I met these fine folks a couple of years ago, and so this project, we had the idea to open up this space. It kind of started around a year and a half ago, and yeah, we're kind of coming up on our first year anniversary for the Synth Center. So I don't know what you all have planned for the presentation, if they've made a slideshow, or I'm just here on standby.
Slideshows were already happening, so
Okay.
but no, I think we mainly want to have it be a conversation because it's great to be here with the folks in the room here in Berlin finally, and so yeah, we just wanted to kind of keep it conversational. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what was the impetus for this first for kind of kicking things off. What started the what was your sense of, when was it that you first kind of came up with the idea of actually starting a space? Because I know it moved around and it's evolved and it continues to evolve, but what was the birth moment for this project?
Are you asking me or the
Yeah,
people
for
in
you,
the room?
yeah.
Okay. Well, it started off about a year and a half ago. I was visiting Beirut, and that was the time that I met Hany. I knew Elyse and Mouka from before, from, like Mouka said, organizing some synth meets in Beirut. And so we got together. Hany had just moved to Beirut and was telling us about his experience at the Synth Library in Prague. And at that time, this was kind of, I think, pre-COVID or during COVID. I think this is like during COVID. I had started building a little synth library in my house here because I have a bunch of gear that I'm not using. So it just, like, we just kind of connected in terms of our visions for wanting to have a shared space that's dedicated to synthesis. And a space that is not necessarily a school and not, just a space where all the gear is set up and it's kind of an informal co-op. So between my idea of setting up a space here in Asheville and Hany's experience with the Synth Center and Elyse and Mouka's kind of desire to open up this space in Beirut, we decided that it would make sense to do it in Beirut and to kind of join forces and visions and and pool our gear together and create a space.
Yeah, that's great. So folks in the audience know how, maybe if you don't know how this works, the idea is that this, if I'm describing this right, that you can kind of go into a space in the synth library concept in the various incarnations it has been in the world, means that you have access to gear, which especially for modular, it means that people might have a computer at home, or they might have some kind of synthesizer, keyboard, whatever, but they may not have gotten the chance to use more advanced synthesizers or modular gear, and that means that they suddenly have access to this stuff and that they can go, I guess, and learn together, right? Yes. So you were talking a little bit about kind of the lineage of this and how you got to know it in Prague, right?
Yes. So the main idea is when we started, we had our gear, all of us. So we wanted to create a space with this collection of synthesizers and make them available for everybody. Actually, not only for the artists that are already familiar with these instruments and they want to experiment or use them in their way, but also to encourage people from like all levels or all backgrounds to just come to the center and not feel intimidating by this machine, and give them the chance to try them out, to experiment with them, and eventually maybe like sample some sound of these instruments or make their own tracks or not. So we also have there a lot of books around sound and music, so people can also read about these topics and share maybe some experiences with each other. So we have we are open to the public 3 days per week when everybody can, they can book their slot and they can come to the center for free to play with the instruments, and there is always one of us facilitators to be there to guide and help in technical issues. But yeah, and we like to encourage people to learn the way they want. So we don't push anybody to do it in a certain way. Rather, we encourage them to find their own way of learning, which we find it very important. Yeah.
So people really come in and explore and find things out, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we also organize some workshops, there's Enter the Synths, which is like introduction into synthesizers. We do it at least once per month, sometimes twice. So we can like break down the building blocks of synthesizers and how people can start out. So, and it's almost full every time we organize this workshop. A lot of people are curious about synthesizers, even if they are, which is really interesting, that a lot of people who come to this workshop, they are not musicians, or they didn't know anything about synthesizers or sound in general. So just curious to have this experience, and it's very fulfilling to see them like with this excitement that they're making noise or making sound, and it could be like the starting point when then they can come to the opening hours and try this stuff they learned on the workshop by themselves. So yeah, so this is the workshop we do, like the team of the center, but also we invite another artist to do several workshops on several topics, but mainly around music, synthesizers, sound design, and sound in general.
What are some of the kinds of people that you've met? Or have you sort of, is it kind of mostly kind of bringing in people that you knew already and inviting folks? Or are there, for either of you, are there folks that you've sort of met through the Synth Center that you wouldn't have met otherwise? Is it kind of are you making new friendships, connections? I don't know.
It's a bit of both, for sure. There's people we used to see around, or people we knew, but didn't know they made music. And there's also people who are newcomers. Like, people who've always wanted to try but never got around to it. I think we also have a lot of people who are trying to get out of the computer and to move away from DAWs, but who are usually intimidated by patch cables and the way a modular synthesizer looks. So yeah, just coming in and starting with 1 or 2 modules, and usually we give them the Mother 32 and the manual as a starter, and they start patching. But yeah, it's a bit of both. It's people we know a bit less well, and people who come for the first time, and we meet them for the first time.
I was struck, I mean, I know I was there for a few days. It was very active for all of you. I mean, all of you were playing, and all of us were playing. But it seemed like there was really a lot of commitment in this scene to improvisation and collaboration. Is that fair? I mean, you all seemed like you were certainly up for lots of performance and jams and making things happen.
Yeah, thing is, in Beirut, it's been happening for a while, for at least 6-7 years. There has been a lot of people getting into music, and the older generation of musicians were open to a lot of newcomers on the scene, and especially with the ease of use of electronic music, electronic instruments, and the easy access to these kind of instruments. There was a kind of boom, and people were interested in experimental music. Actually, there's a festival that has been going on in Beirut for 22 years. It's called Ertijal Festival, which means improvisation. And it's basically a 3 or 4 day festival, depending on the years, with a lot of international and local musicians playing experimental music of all sorts. So free jazz, free improv, experimental rock, post-punk stuff that goes crazy. So yeah, the interest in the electronic music, and especially in the experimental side of electronic music, has been booming for quite a few years. And I don't know what triggered it, but a lot of people are interested, and sometimes we'd be playing for a crowd that exceeds 200 people, and this is huge in Beirut for experimental and non-traditional music or non-popular music. So yeah, the festival I talked about has around, like on the span of 4 days, maybe 400 to 600 visitors. So it's kind of a huge thing, and it's still ongoing for 22 years. Yeah, and people get into this kind of music, and they get dedicated to this kind of music because I think it's a kind of escape, and sometimes it's a better escape than clubbing, but I don't think so, because everybody goes to clubs, almost. Don't look at me like that. I know you don't club.
Why choose, in other words, right? You can do both.
Yeah. We can do both, of course. So, yeah, I was joking.
What would you say the role of, I mean, because I had certainly heard, I mean, I'm biased both myself and some of the circles that I'm plugged into, but it felt like I was hearing so much about, I mean, I'd heard all of your music, before I traveled there, and a lot of the other folks that I met, we were hearing so much great stuff kind of come out of Beirut, especially in recent years. And I mean, I know that the thing that always gets repeated about Lebanon is that there's more Lebanese people outside of the country than in, but certainly there was a lot of advocacy for great music and interesting labels and lots of experimentalism that we were hearing about. What would you say the sort of role of electronic music is relative to that scene? The electronics are blending in with other forms of improvisation, including acoustic improvisation. Those things blur together, or where do they fit in?
They do fit in a lot of setups. A lot of bands incorporated electronic musical instruments in their setups. I don't think there's either or. So anything that is musical and sounds nice and works in a given setup, they would go for it. I'm talking about the bands I know and the people that actually work with let's say, organic instruments and or electronic. So there's no, sometimes this purism of the need of a natural or traditional instrument fades off when any kind of instrument becomes musical or any kind of tool becomes musical. And it's always nice I think it's always nice to experiment with whatever tools are available, except when the electricity is off, because it's something that happens in Lebanon, and we should wait for electricity to be back so we can actually use the electronic musical instruments. But
I mean, this is real, right? I even, like, I experienced this. I was doing a little more improvisation than maybe I planned, because there was no time to practice when I discovered I didn't have battery power, right? But do you have 24-hour power in the synth center?
Yes.
It's really 24 hours. It's even going at night, or?
No, it's 24 hours, but
Wow,
it's very
okay.
exceptional. We are really lucky to be in a neighborhood when it's possible to provide 24 hours. Like it's though like private provider. It's not from the state, but in most neighborhoods it's 8 to 12 hours. Yeah, and usually like in the late afternoon, start till midnight or something.
Yeah, so if for those of you who haven't kind of experienced this, the power will just sort of blink off at times, sometimes unpredictably, and then there are kind of these hours of time, in the afternoon or at night where you don't have electricity. So one reason to go to the synth center is literally then you can go and rely on electricity there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just so
Can I just interrupt for a second?
Yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely. I was just about to go.
Since this is a conversation, I think it's worth maybe pausing a little bit and for one of the people there to talk a little bit about Beirut and the context in which the center emerged. Because the center itself, it's not a new idea. We're not the first people to come up with this. There's a Synth Library in Prague and Portland and the San Francisco Tape Music Center. But I think what's unique is the environment out of which the space was born. And I think if one of you all wants to just talk a little bit about the situation in Beirut briefly, just to provide some context for the space. And also like on the topic of, Mouka, you mentioned that people are using synths kind of like, or it's kind of an escape from the computer world, like, escape into the hardware world, or it's an alternative to the club. But I also think that this space is an alternative to the impossible life that is life in Lebanon currently. So maybe just to speak about that a little bit.
Yeah, I can say. Like, I think it's a lot of people. I remember when we started, we thought it's gonna be a project only for 3 months, because we didn't know it's a new concept to the city, but. The support from the old people after 3 months was really huge, and they asked us like, please keep going. And I think it's important for everybody, even for people that they don't do music and they don't visit the center, to have such a space where they can feel safe, because the center is literally open to everybody, like from all backgrounds. And everything what we do for the public is for free, and this is creating kind of, there is no pressure of coming to the center, just like be there and be yourself, express yourself, and feel free to share anything you want with other people in a city where it is like facing a lot of crisis, economic crisis, political crisis, security crisis, lack of some resources, the basic resources, like electricity, for example. So it's kind of, nice space so everybody can feel like they are welcome there. And a lot of people, they say like, please don't close the space, please go on, even they don't come, which is really amazing. Yeah, so I don't know if you guys...
So, I want to talk about Beirut in 2010. Mouka, you remember too? I think the striking difference to me now, talking about clubs and club music and the clubbing scene, that was really in the foreground of Beirut's nightlife, I guess. It was just really in party mode, and I notice now, after everything that's been happening, it's been more of let's make music vibe, which is refreshing. There's still parties happening, but you saw the party on the rooftop where you both played. There was live music, and that's happening more and more. So I don't know if it's this compelling need to express instead of escaping, maybe. And yeah, I like that. I think in comparison to what it was in 2010, because also that was, we talk about it now like that was the good phase, and it was a lot better in a lot of ways, but there's also this sense of wanting to make things together instead of maybe listening or dancing or being passive or escaping.
Do you want to add to that, Ziad? Since we were talking about also loving clubbing. I mean, they're kind of different channel, they're sort of different emotional channels, right? Maybe they can be complementary, but there's a, how would you describe those two things? Because I think this is something Berlin struggles with sometimes too, and now Berlin is facing some of its own crises, and people facing crises and trauma, and trying to figure out what the right, no, not what the right, but how we respond musically.
Yeah, I think it's something that we will eventually see and watch happen. I don't know what will happen later because, like Hany said, when we opened the center, it was just a 3-month project, but after those 3 months, we also decided to make it 3 extra months. So it's always short-term projects that we work on, and especially when something needs financial help and electricity and stuff that are unavailable kind of in Lebanon. So running a center within with no vision to the future is kind of it's like driving in the dark. So it's but this is how we live in Lebanon. We don't know what will happen tomorrow. There's a bunch of things that happen on the daily basis that block whatever creative process or whatever work process or whatever. I'm not making any sense, but I will. So yeah, these crises, I think there's also this worldwide crisis of fuel coming up and of the chip shortages that we've been talking about. And all of these things, I don't know how musicians and sound artists and artists in general will express these things, but I think there is a huge need to express and to be heard and to be making things and putting them out. And I feel it in Beirut, and I see it when people who are not musicians and are just interested in how to make this sound and how to use this machine and how to be creative in whatever aspect, because sometimes I see people in the synth workshop, and then there's another workshop about something else completely that's art related, and they would go there and they would be also as interested. So there's this kind of need of expression and learning new things and using them as a tool for expression, and it's kind of inspiring to us, to me, myself, and to themselves, because it's a cycle of giving and taking, and moving away from these crises, these political crises, and whatever is happening in the world, and who's killing who, and yeah, basically, there's no running away. There's always a sort of expressing our fear or our hatred or our love or our whatever emotion we feel towards whatever is happening. So yeah, I hope I made sense.
Yeah, that made sense. That made lots of sense. That's exciting to me, though, right? I mean, because we don't maybe talk about that. I mean, not to repeat this point, but we don't talk about that so much, even in a context like the Superbooth, that people who, we imagine, I don't know, you go, you buy synthesizers, you make a critically acclaimed album, you go to music school, you become a superstar DJ or a critically acclaimed composer, whatever it is. It's kind of exciting in a way that people who aren't imagining any of that come into this room and find just playing around with synthesizers. And, I mean, that's exciting to me. Yeah. So Bana, I don't know if that helped start to answer that. I mean, we talked about these kind of layered, that Beirut has these kind of layered crises, right? That there's sort of more than one crisis at once. And sometimes it's hard to tell kind of where one begins and the next ends. But I don't know. I mean, I guess we should still say you should all still come visit. It's a very welcoming place too. But maybe some of these kind of layered crises are also a preview of some of the stuff that you might find yourself dealing with in other parts of the world. So, especially we can't take our electricity for granted, possibly even in Germany.
And I think that the space, sorry to interrupt, but I think that the space is also a testament to what is possible within a crisis. The fact that we were able to open the space in the middle of, again, these multidimensional crises in Lebanon and in the middle of COVID, like the fact that we were able to make this space happen is kind of a testament to just the possibility of what is still available to us, even within an environment of unknowns, which, you know, multiply that by 2 or 10 in Lebanon. So I think just in terms of, I mean, it's shown me that if you really want to make something happen, you don't have to know what the outcome is going to be. And like I said, like this space was intentionally supposed to be a 3-month project. And through the engagement process and through building the space, it kind of led to being open for a longer time, and there is an urgent need for spaces like this everywhere, not just in Lebanon, I think, and it's never really the right time, but it always is kind of.
Well, maybe it is worth saying that this is something that requires ongoing resources, right? So that there is a cost to maintaining this space over time, and that's something that all of you are actively working on now, right? How are things evolving in terms of how do you see what are the kind of pathways that might make this sustainable if people do want to keep it around?
Maybe the biggest challenge we have, as Ziad mentioned, that we are not able to have a long-term planning, and that's basically because of the financial resources. Because I think the 4 of us, we are very motivated and passionate about what we are doing in the center, and we are investing a lot of our energy and experience and time and also our own resources. But to maintain the space for the long term, it would help us a lot to have this kind of stability, at least that we can plan what we're gonna do for the next year at least, or next 2 years. So we had in the beginning, we were only donation-based kind of financial support. Then we got funding for a short time. Now we are seeking for more resources so we can go on. So we are willing to go on. What we need, mainly just the stability on the financial, so we can keep the space up. So because it's important also and very fundamental to offer people the space for free and not to charge anything, because they are. Yeah, because of the crisis, and because we want, if we make it for some money, maybe it will lead to excluding some of the people, and we insist of making everything accessible for everybody. So yeah.
Well, and I guess there's sort of a lot of operational costs, right? There's the physical rent for the space. There's paying for this private electricity, since you're only getting
almost the same like the rent. So it's
the power is as much as the rent.
As much as the rent, which is insane.
Yeah.
And it can go even like more. It can increase over
It
time.
could get worse.
Yeah, because the fuel is getting more expensive. So, yeah.
Because it's literally like diesel fuel that gets
Yes.
delivered to a generator, right? So in order to have electricity in Beirut right now, it's like you're powering generators with diesel fuel, which is not the most.
Yeah, very refreshing.
Yeah. Are people using solar panel? Somebody asked me this the other day, and I didn't have an answer. If people are using solar,
If some people they can afford that to have the solar panels and to have big batteries to store electricity. So yeah, but it's not that cheap to have this technology.
yeah.
People are stealing solar panels. So I have a friend who
okay.
had solar panels, and he doesn't have solar panels anymore. He has the batteries at home, but he doesn't have the.
Because they took the solar panels.
There's a lot of. It's becoming more and more common to steal stuff from buildings. So yeah, it's not a nice situation.
Let's hope everything is there when we go back.
Oh, that your stuff is still there when you go back. Yeah.
I mean at the center.
At the center. That would be an unhappy ending to this particular story, yes. So assuming that it's there, though, there are donations that have come from manufacturers, right? And so I'm finally depositing this electron. I saw Bastel Instrument stuff. I know it's a Moog, I guess, gave some. Arturia, yeah. So their gear companies are also donating things, and then you all are literally leaving your gear there for other people to use when you're not on tour, right? So if anyone is curious to kind of adopt this model, that's been part of the element. It's like really trusting each other with your equipment, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But people,
and there's also like other people that leaving their instruments there. So we have like some friends or people just visiting the center, and they loved the idea, and they said, hey, I have this synthesizer or piece of gear, I'm not using it, so please leave it here so other people can have access to it, which is amazing. And so we have also a lot of gear from other people and friends, and so also it's the collection of synthesizers and equipment we have, it's changing constantly because people, they bringing stuff, then taking another stuff, and so on.
what does it mean for all of you, sort of as artists, then, to have this space? Has that impacted your kind of musical practice at all? Or is it just kind of separate from that, and it's just good to be able to kind of give back to this, back to the community around you?
What do you think?
I mean, it hasn't been that long, I know. It's been a busy year and a half, the past year and a half, but.
Yeah, I don't think it affected. No, it didn't. We're still making music, I guess. We're making more music with the center, I think. Sometimes with the AV nights, and like we have the audiovisual nights where we invite a visual artist, and we invite musicians and ourselves, and we just jam to the visuals that are happening. So this is one more.
Oh yeah, I have a picture of that too. Yeah.
This is one more event that help us play. So we're just experimenting more and more. I think the space didn't stop us from making music.
No, not at all. I mean, on my end, no. On the contrary.
Yeah, so, yeah, no, it helped us. I think it helped us in many different...
Yeah, I read a lot of manuals, too.
Yeah, we had to read manuals to teach.
But to read manuals?
Yeah.
We
had to. So if someone comes in and asks us about how do you make this happen?
I mean, that's a big part of why I do what I do, I think, is that it's a chance that I don't think I would ever learn as much about the tools that I use were not having to write about them and do stuff. I don't know when I would read manuals otherwise. But you read manuals in order to teach somebody else how to use the thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a very different experience, actually. Just so I think it's also important to acknowledge that community spaces are a lot of work, and they're complicated, and they do take up resources. And so my experience was a little bit different. I had to basically put my life on hold last year to go out to Beirut and establish the space in the summer. And so it did, so my creative practice in terms of my studio work came to a total standstill, which was fine. That's what I wanted to do. So, but I personally wasn't able to manage the two. And so my whole summer was dedicated to setting up the space, doing doing the administrative stuff, setting up the scheduling, the systems, and so it did interrupt my kind of regular studio practice, and that's something that that is, I don't want to say a risk, but it's something that can happen. You know, if somebody's planning on opening a space like this, I mean, that's a real thing.
So plan on it to kind of destroy your life for at least a short period of time. But then it sounds like you set up some systems that then made it sustainable, things like scheduling, so that it would run smoothly.
Yeah, but all of that kind of took time, and we all kind of worked together in terms of finding, you know, the right schedule, the right days for open hours, and but all of that is administrative work, and it is very time consuming, and I'm not able to multitask like that. I definitely, you know, so it depends on the person, but for me, I like to compartmentalize my work and have long uninterrupted periods of time to work on music, which was not possible. So that's just another side of it. Yeah.
So you did a sort of a sprint to just focus on kind of setup and administration.
Yeah.
For the Synth Center. Yeah.
Yeah.
How has it evolved then, kind of since then? Since I know you talked a little bit, all of you talked a little bit about that it's changing and adapting. What are some of the kind of adaptations that are happening now?
What do you mean exactly?
In terms of how it's evolved since it got started? Are there kind of changes or adaptations that you made that apart from needing this funding, there are more people involved, right?
More people involved? Yes, we have.
So like Omar, yeah.
Like Omar.
We can zoom him too if you really want to get ambitious.
So we have one more person in the team. He's like volunteering actually and helping us when we don't have sometimes enough time to be there. So he also one of these artists who left a lot of his gear in the center, also accessible to other people. Because yeah, as Bana said, it's very time consuming to be there and to maintain the space. And the fact that on the ground now we are the three of us as like being there physically in the center, so it's making it a little bit easier. So it's not only one, but sometimes we get busy. Sometimes some of us will travel and we try but like making all the program for each month, we always like meet even with Bana and we work on that. But the community is getting grower, it's getting bigger, and more people are visiting now the center, and more artists are involved also. And we're making some of this event that we were testing, like the AV night. So it's becoming like one of the events that we're doing like each 2 or 3 months. So we are always inviting different artists to be part of. Also our programming is changing a lot because a lot of artists are visiting Beirut, either like are Lebanese living abroad or just other artists visiting. So if we know that they are coming, we invite them or a lot of it happens a lot. They know about the center and then they want to come to visit, and they offer that they can make some workshop or presentation or performance. So yeah, it's very dynamic. It's very like changing every month, which is like exciting also for us. Yeah, to adapt to this, like, yeah.
I also want to say we've been branching out a little without really drifting away from synthesizers. So one thing was the AV night, where we usually find... no, that's a screening. That's
a screening.
Well,
technically,
yeah,
is
this
AV,
is AV night.
and it's at night.
We're hosting a poetry night next week. Which
cool.
also Bana, interestingly enough, said is a form of synthesis. So But there's always like some kind of correspondence or parallel to be drawn between synthesizers or electronic music and whatever else is happening, whether it's poetry or visuals or.
Can you say more about that? I'm curious. So I think, I mean, of course, all of the stuff that Superbooth is a very poetic event, but I've never heard someone say, kind of make that connection between poetry and synthesis. It's Bana?
Bana, yeah.
Bana? We go live back to Asheville for the answer to that question.
I mean, that's still kind of a half-baked idea, but I took a poetry workshop earlier this year and was just kind of, I mean, I just thought about that this morning, poetry as synthesis, because Elyse sent me the flyer of the poetry workshop, which I'm so excited that there's poetry happening at the center. I hope there will be more of that, but it's still not a fully formed idea, but I like the idea of synthesis being an expanded term that doesn't necessarily apply to sound. I think it can apply to so many things. And one of the projects that we wanted to do, which I hope we will do at the center, was to create a small dictionary of synthesis terms in Arabic. Because when we came to open the center, we realized that there's no word for synthesis in Arabic. So since then, I've just been thinking about that word and the etymology of the word and what it means. And I think, yeah, synthesis is a deep well of a concept that can be applied to many different things.
Yeah, I mean, according to legend, I guess Bob Moog hated the term synthesizer, but I mean, then you also read the early Moog literature and they call the instruments synthesizers fairly early on anyway, so I like the term. I'll be really curious where you arrive with that.
I think Alan Strange also talks about that in the introduction to his book, and he's like, maybe the people should be called the synthesizers. You know, he has this whole argument, but I think it's a very interesting term, and the more you think about it, the more dimensionality it takes on.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to have some questions from the audience. I know you're out in the darkness. I can repeat what you're saying, even if we can't get a microphone to you. But if you have any questions for Bana or the folks on stage or any of us about what you've heard or other things you're curious about Lebanon.
You think about this in Berlin somehow also such a...
We could think about this. And there's also, as part of CTM Festival, and at the location where it seems to be the best place to go on Sundays to drink arak, Give Something Back to Berlin is coming to talk about the Open Music Lab, I think they call it. It's a slightly different model, but they're also kind of creating a community space. So join us a week from Monday, then at 5:00 p.m. There's not going to be a rock there, but there'll be beer and for another kind of conversation. Yeah, I hope we think about this a lot in Berlin. Do you have it? Well, now that you're all now also Berliners after April and May, how would you think about it for Berlin?
Yeah, I think we all think that this space are much needed in every city, and I'm really surprised that what we know about such a project, maybe 3 or 4 around the world, but maybe we hope it's going to be like a thing happening in other regions also. I think we all need such a space in all communities, in all contexts. Yeah, so yeah, hopefully it'll be in Berlin soon as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I've had lots of conversations with refugees about this too, because they miss their studios that they had to leave behind. Yeah, question?
Yeah, just wondering if you could further elaborate on the funding situation. Is there any funding available at all in Beirut at the moment? Foreign organizations or embassies or anything local? And how much do you need to sustain the studio?
So sort of a two-part question to repeat it. One is what's the funding situation in Beirut and what funding is available from embassies, foreign organizations, and so on. And then the second half of the question, which is important, which is how much do you need in order to sustain the...
There are funding entities in Lebanon where we can present our file, and if it's accepted, we can get the funding. So we're waiting on one. Earlier this year, we got a funding from Goethe-Institut that sustains us up till June, end of June. This fund we applied to now, we'll get the results in June, but it won't be applicable before November, right?
Yes, the beginning next
Beginning
year.
next year. So yeah. So yeah, now we're in lingo. We don't know what we'll be doing for the summer, but for the summer and autumn and fall. To sustain this space, we have the numbers, but I'm not sure we can just share them here. It's could we just say? So basically, the rent, we have to pay rent, we have to pay the generator, which gives us electricity, and this is a number that's going on the rise every month. It's kind of exponentially going on the rise. Plus, there's maintenance and other stuff. This is the basic stuff that we need. Luckily, we don't have water bills for some reason. That's a good thing. With corruption, sometimes bills disappear, but sometimes there's other bills that we should pay for. For now, the electricity from the government is still cheap because it shows up sometimes during the day, says hello and leaves. So yeah, the average per month is just to break even, just pay the bills, is around $1,000. Maybe, yeah, it's an average of $1,000 for now. We're waiting to see how the diesel situation in the world happens, and we don't. Yeah, this is why everything is short-term plans. So yeah, we have to wait to see to give proper numbers. But this is the numbers as of today, let's say, of May 2022. Other than that, there are a few things that we have to pay for, let's say, workshop people who come give workshops. We like to give them a small donation, a small thank you gift for their time and efforts, especially local Lebanese, local or living in Lebanon workshop givers. Other than that, yeah, the maintenance people who come help us with maintaining the space. We also like to give them small thank you donations. So yeah, this is around 1,000 something euros, dollars. It's almost the same, right? Euros and dollars now.
Almost.
So yeah, this is without maintaining the equipment. This is without buying new stuff that we might need, let's say plugs or electric cables or audio cables or whatever, which are also pricey for some reason. Now they're becoming around $12 a cable. I don't know why. So yeah, this is about it for the funding.
$12, like not for a patch cable? For what kind of cables?
The audio jacks.
Really?
Like the 2-meter jack is around this price.
Wow, okay. So send cables.
Send cables.
Send cables.
I mean, it is. I have to say, it's extraordinary how much, how this kind of model, just based on other things that I've seen and kinds of community and support effort for electronic music, the return on investment is unusually high, and that's something that, yeah. So, like considering this for Berlin, that's something that we should consider here locally, as well as looking at how we support you all elsewhere. Maybe one more question. Yeah?
It's not a question, it's more like a compliment, because I wish there was such a center in the 90s when I started playing. So what the guys are doing is amazing, and they should be encouraged and supported.
Thank you.
So he said that he wished that there had been a space like this when he was playing in Beirut in the 90s, and so it was a compliment. Yeah.
Yeah, in the 90s we used to jam at someone's place and just experiment with whatever we have as instruments. So someone would lend us a bass, the other would lend us the guitar amp, and yeah, at Rolf's. His cousin.
Oh, his cousin. Yeah. Maybe one other question, and then we. Well, then I say thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, pleasure to have you guys here. We have to find some way to keep the exchange going, however we do it, because otherwise I'm going to miss this constant exchange. So we will definitely keep it going. Oh, and when and where are you playing on Saturday? So because you should hear them all come and play. It's Saturday, 7:30.
7:30.
Bungalowsdorf.
Yes, exactly.
So 7:30 Saturday, Bungalowsdorf. Come hear these folks play. Not Bana, unless we figure out a way to do it via Zoom. Maybe poetry via Zoom with Bana. But otherwise, yeah, all three of these folks in the Bungalowsdorf. Hope to see you there. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.